Seventh pass breakup, most by defensive linemen in the league this season. It's third down. The Vikings are 1 of 4 on third down. Favre out of the shotgun. Bears run 4. Brett's hit and thrown down. Brett very slow to get up. Are you okay down there, Greg?
I'm just fine. My head is a little bit better than Brett Favre's, guys. Update, Brett Favre has a concussion, so his return is extremely doubtful.
We were playing outdoors at University of Minnesota because the dome had collapsed that previous week. We were playing the Bears. I'd been banged up a little bit, so I played like a quarter in this game, and we flipped sides. And it was 1 or 2 plays into the second quarter. I throw a little swing pass to the left. The guy just kind of bumps into me. Harmless hit, no big deal. And as I'm falling to the turf, the side of my head hits the turf. And man, the lights were out. My next memory was of our trainer was shaking me. Come on, buddy. And I just remember snoring. And I kind of came to, and I said, "Hey, was that snoring?" And he said, "Yeah, you had a concussion." And then it started kind of like, you know, what just happened here? And got up, and he said, hey, buddy, you were out for about 10, 20 seconds.
I guess one of my defining moments is just being an All-American, getting that kind of recognition. I was runner-up for the Heisman Trophy in 1971. Some of my more memorable situations where I got my bell rung, as they said, was hitting my head on the turf, because you can go down pretty hard. I mean, the surfaces are really important, that you play on surfaces that will protect you.
I never thought that the field I was playing on would hurt me more than a player would. I thought the field was supposed to be comforting. You know, when my school told me we were getting a turf field, we had a grand opening for it, and I didn't know that it would hurt me worse than a grass field. My first injury was when I was 8 years old. When I was going back, everything went black, and when my head snapped on the ground, I knew in that moment something wasn't right, because everything was just gone and everything was just black.
And once I saw her and saw her eyes, I remember calling the pediatrician. They said just to watch her through the night, but it really worried me. And I guess I kind of thought in the back of my mind, what about tomorrow? What's next? Will she feel better? And that's when we ended up going to the ER, because she wasn't better.
My second concussion, when my head hit the turf, it hit it so hard with so much impact that it bounced up and hit it again, causing me to get whiplash and a sprained neck. I remember I laid there for 10 seconds because I blacked out. I remember my teammates were saying my name, but it was really buzzy because I had a buzzing sound in my ear. And I stood up and the whole field was spinning around me. And I remember I had no idea what was going on. I was so nauseous. And then the trainer looked at me and he said, "You're not okay, you need to go to the ER." Throughout that school year of 7th grade year, I probably missed about 6 weeks in total of school. I had to admit to my symptoms, and I flew up to Boston and saw a doctor there, and he diagnosed me with post-concussion syndrome.
Post-concussion syndrome is persistent concussion symptoms. Most concussion symptoms from most mild concussions go away within 7 to 10 days, but when symptoms last weeks or months, we call that post-concussion syndrome.
Senator Warren, if you will introduce 2 of our panel.
I will do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nowinski, who is the co-founder and executive director of the Sports Legacy Institute.
I never understood concussions until I got that last one. And I remember when I was an active athlete, teammates would have concussions, I would just assume they were soft. I used to just think it was just like a weird toughness issue that they just, their brain gave out on them. And so it wasn't until I got mine and then was really damaged that I realized that, oh, this is actually a real thing. Post-concussion syndrome is real. I was most taken aback by the fact that at that point I was 24 years old, having theoretically gotten a great education, college graduate, but didn't understand what I was doing to my brain. And I thought, God, if I don't understand it, like, what chance do teenagers have? What chance do kids have?
The symptom that I deal with every day are nausea, headaches, dizziness. I faint a lot. I have vertigo, which always feels like I'm on a boat, and I just don't feel normal. I haven't felt normal since I was 13 years old, and I'm now 17.
We debate helmets till we're blue in the face in a sport like football. But when you actually look at the data, besides head-to-head collisions, the next biggest opportunity is hitting your head on the ground. It's nearly 1 in 4 in sports are happening for someone's head hitting the ground.
I've had no telling how many concussions. Get asked this question all the time. But when I talk about actual not remembering at the time or, being out, most of those were from my head hitting the turf.
For years, we've cringed at those loud head-to-head hits. But new focus could be turning to these, the quieter head-to-turf blow or bounce, which impacts all ages and athletes. Synthetic turf is everywhere. Out of the 63 North Texas high school stadiums the I-Team checked, only 9 still have grass.
The original synthetic turf became called AstroTurf because it was used in the Houston Astrodome and they painted the glass, so they had to have an alternative. So they used these first knit nylon synthetic turf systems.
Daytime games in the Astrodome's first days brought out a problem beyond any anticipation of the designers. Paint all the skylights with a white acrylic coating to cut down the glare. The Astrodome, truly the 8th wonder of the world.
If I had my preference, it would be natural surface, but not just any natural surface. I preferred, like, as an example, Arizona, where you're obviously in a controlled climate, if there ever was one. Now, not all natural surfaces are the best. And I played, like, one time in Carolina, generally had good surface, and they had a problem. I don't know what had happened, but there was big gouges, and they tried to, spruce it up, and it backfired on them. And so you would cut, and a chunk of sod would just give. And, I'd much rather play on artificial turf than that.
Our artificial turf fields are the most requested fields in our park system right now. We have over 220 park facilities in the city and limited amount of operation and maintenance staff. And so getting to and maintaining natural grass fields is very difficult. A lot of natural turf fields are closed, 2, 3, 4 months a year for rest and regrowth and maintenance. Whereas on our synthetic turf fields, we can play on them 24/7, 365 days a year.
I'm guessing from a longevity standpoint, what you would spend in cutting, mowing costs, buying a new mower, gas, water. And, in some places, granted, California, water shortage, or you can't be watering the pristine football field. It makes perfect sense. And if you're doing an artificial surface, my thought is there's no reason that you can't get it right.
Only 17 of the 63 fields we checked did some type of testing in the last 2 years. Many had never been tested at all. Former NFL pro Daryl Johnston owns a company that maintains synthetic turf.
What do you think parents sitting in the stands don't realize about these fields?
They don't realize how hard they can actually get.
There's so much work that needs to be done to look at performance and safety for athletes. We started looking at finding critical fall height and more evidence-based things for head impact criteria. The HIC test is used in crash test dummies, and in the automotive industry, that's what they use to measure the forces. So adapting it and taking it to the synthetic turf world, we look at the head impact criteria and we're finding 1.7 to 2.5 meters are the heights that we can drop to. You're not gonna find that in synthetic turf without a shock pad. You tend to be 1.3 or lower. To get above 1.3 meters, you need a shock pad.
Do I think the general public knows, believes, has heard, whatever you want to call it, that there's a safer surface in which to play on? No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think that most parents kind of take the word of the local youth coordinator or the coach. They're taking their word for, look, Mom, this is the best surface that we could buy, so I think some of it's a lack of knowledge more than anything. But I don't believe that the general public would know.
No, I don't think the general public really knows what's being done or what goes into making pristine playing surfaces.
The general public doesn't know what are safe fields. I mean, athletes don't really know what are safe fields until they get on them.
I just assumed that the turf field would be up to par, it would be safe, it would be protective, and of course, suffering multiple concussions, and that's when I realized that you can't really take that for granted, that they're probably not all the same.
Too many school districts are installing and then ignoring the fields.
There's a point this can become dangerous after years of no maintenance.
Absolutely.
Johnston says they tell schools the crumb rubber infill meant to protect athletes moves, settles, and is lost over time. But even a call from the former Cowboy is not changing minds.
So running and the cutting, you dislodge the infill and you can cause it to splash and move to different locations. So you definitely need to be aware of that's occurring. If we simulate wear on synthetic turf, you lose infill, you lose fiber density. The consistency of that surface stays longer with a shock pad.
When we started talking about turf, it was completely obvious and it's intuitive that if we have a slightly softer surface, you're going to have better outcomes for the brain. The turf is not just a playing surface, but it's really, in my mind, a piece of safety equipment. It's there simply so that when kids fall down, they don't get hurt, right? That's why you lay that over. And that you can, you put that turf down and now they can play 24 hours a day if you want to. But if it's your kid, the key to being a good parent on this is to ask the right questions. And, I fielded a call from somebody just the other day who has all the resources in the world at their disposal, and the discussion was about helmets. And I said, have you thought about surfaces? Have the surfaces been tested that your kid's playing on? And the honest answer was no. He had not thought about them, and he was certain that they had a terrible field. But he didn't realize how he could intervene. And so the biggest thing that parents can do is ask all the right questions. What kind of training do the coaches have? Are you using the best possible equipment, and are you discussing that? And then, are you testing your fields every year?
Are we doing all we can do? There's moms out there all over who are advocates for something. You don't want a mother on you when there's something available. And again, it may cost a little bit more on the front end, but to even say, is that not important? Yeah, it's that important because no one wants their child to suffer brain injuries, or an adult for that matter.
I think the reality is that we all need to be aware, and we do need to be educated on the playing surface. And I also think that there's responsibility for coaches, for athletic directors, for the school to kind of make everyone aware too. I think we invest a lot in them with our children. Our children go to school, then we trust them, and I think that by entrusting them, they owe it to us to provide a safe environment for our children.
I think it's important for parents to ask questions of where's the data? Show me data. I mean, there's always data. Where's this been tested? Where's the independent data? How are you making this field better for the children that are playing on it?
Sports are great. I love them, and I love watching my children play them, but I think that people really need to wake up and be aware and realize there are things they can control. They pick where their child's going to school, what their child's learning, what their child's doing. Well, again, with sports, they need to realize that they do have control. They can speak up, and I think that more people need to do that, and I hope that people do, because no child should have to miss the greatest part of their life, high school years, and be taken away from their friends because they can't be at school or just feel bad.
And there's lots of Gracie Hussies out there. No matter what town I go to give a talk, somebody comes up afterwards and said, this is my son, this is my daughter. They're no longer going to school, they're not the same kid, and I don't know what their future's gonna be.
I think if you ask any athlete who has a knee replacement or shoulder replacement, kind of the skeletal injury from the torn ligaments, and they said, would you do it over again? They absolutely say yes. Head trauma is different. It's painful for not just the player, but it's painful for the people around him, family.
We do know about concussions and head injuries, although not a great deal, but what we know is it's not good. You know, it's not repairable. How many times did I go back out with head ringing, you know, hearing bells in my ears and seeing stars? Did anyone think that was a concussion way back in the day? No. If you can still play, you play. You may not remember it the next day, but that was kind of cool to talk about. Like, wow, man, that guy's tremendously tough. You don't even remember what happened. Now I'm thinking, wow, if I only knew, you know, would it be different? And, you know, I can only hope and pray that at 55 or at 60, I don't suffer the same things that some of these other guys that were portrayed in movies suffer.
Brain injuries should not be part of sports. And it's our job to provide the safest possible playing environment so that the kids can get all the benefits of sports, but really we should have almost zero tolerance for brain injuries outside of really, truly pure accidents that we could not have prevented. So there's now education for most constituencies in sports. So to be a coach in many states, you now have to have annual concussion training. Parents now need to receive some measure of education because people forget that parents are the most likely person to actually identify the concussion when the kid gets home. And then there's even education for kids. So that education part of teaching kids signs and symptoms and what to look for is starting to change that culture.
Up until about my last year, so 2010-9, there was no concussion protocol. There just wasn't. When I took my baseline test, which is standard now across the league, and it may even be in college and high school, which it should be. Before a kid ever bangs his head on a field, he should be given a concussion protocol test.
I have a 14-year-old, soon to be 15-year-old son, and you have to really kind of take a long, hard look. And if you want to be a responsible parent, not just, it's a tough decision. Again, football has been the biggest part of my life, so it'd be hard for me not to let my son play, but I also am going to try to do whatever I can to make sure that he's playing in the safest environment possible, be it equipment, the field, the coach's protocol as far as dealing with those kind of injuries. And I think we're going in the right direction.
If I had a son myself, I suppose I could make him not play, but I would really, really strongly discourage him from playing. And that seems to surprise people when I tell them that. They always say the ultimate tough guy, or Iron Man, or whatever. That doesn't really serve you well at 55 if you have a lot of head injuries. You know, so what? You're the Iron Man. You don't remember what you're doing. You can't remember where your car keys are, how to get home.
Changing the surfaces on fields could help prevent some of these injuries because hitting your head on a hard surface worsens the impact.
And we need to start having that conversation today because these concussions will cost them. We see those athletes 20, 30, 50 years later when they come to us saying, something's happened, and it was those concussions years ago when I was an athlete.
I think the message from me is that you do all you can do, whatever that may be, surface, prevention, treatment, knowing that you can't totally eliminate an ACL or a concussion, but you do all you can to lower that number. And from a youth standpoint, that's going to impact them tremendously. But to think that there's products out there, potentially products out there that can provide a safer environment, but still keep the game intact, and you're not doing anything about it. You know, it's hard to even imagine it in today's day and age that we first of all would allow that, and that someone would actually do that. Why you wouldn't provide the best possible surface available makes absolutely no sense. And that's what, this is not just my opinion, this is what science has proven. And so you do it because you have the means to do it. You provide that service.